I'm the chair of the Save Avery Hill Winter Garden Campaign Group, and I'm joined on the platform by John Webb, and John has been very much the convener and secretary and driver of the campaign overall. And Nigel Fletcher is the ward councillor for Eltham South, and he's been very active within the campaign group as well. It's over 2 years since the Save the Avery Hill Winter Garden Campaign organised its last public meeting, and the group felt it timely to organise another one to report back on developments in relation to the future of the Winter Garden and to prepare for the planning application which will be submitted to the council connected with the building of a new school on the site and what the ramifications of that will be. We did invite councillors and officers from the Royal Borough of Greenwich to come tonight, and we invited Clive Efford MP to come, and we invited Gary Herbert, who's the Department for Education's project director, to come. But this is also half-term week, so it wasn't necessarily a good sort of week to choose because a number of those people are unable to be here because of half-term. And Councillor Danny Thorpe, leader of the council, Councillor Miranda Williams, who's the cabinet lead for culture, leisure and the voluntary sector, have other prior commitments, and Katrina Delaney, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of the Council, also is unable to be here tonight. But Katrina has given me a statement which I'll read out later. Clive Efford MP was fully intending to come, but last week he was told that he was under a 3-line whip to be in the House of Commons tonight for reasons I don't need to spell out to you. But Clive has also sent me a statement which I'll read out at the end of my presentation tonight. But we do very much value the support that you've demonstrated by attending the meeting tonight. Your interest and support may stem from a whole number of factors. You may be a friend of the park and you sort of feel that the Winter Garden has always been a marvellous monument, if you like, to Colonel North and his developments. You may have been a former student of the Avery Hill College of Education, or Woolwich Polytechnic, or indeed the University of Greenwich. Or you may be a local resident who has been a regular visitor to the Winter Garden over the years and have taken your children and even your grandchildren, dare I say there. You know, it's been an important feature, if you like, of your social and family lives. Or you may have a particular historical interest in the Winter Garden as a fine example of a conservatory, second only in size to Kew Gardens itself. What I want to do now in setting the scene is to give an overview of what's happened since our last public meeting on the 27th of July 2017. 2 years ago we met to ponder the disappointing news that the University of Greenwich was intending to sell the mansion site at Avery Hill, throwing into doubt the future of the Winter Garden. And equally disturbing was the news that the university had abandoned its bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund to restore and renovate the Winter Garden and to link it in an integrated and ceremonial corridor to the historic parts of the mansion site, the picture gallery, the sculpture gallery, the foyer and the entrance portico. At this stage, the council had not really begun to grapple with the implications of the sale for the future of the Winter Garden, maintaining that it was a matter primarily for the university. But the public meeting that we held 2 years ago did set in motion a number of activities by the campaign group to raise the profile of the Winter Garden and the debate about its future. A petition was launched and a petition signing event was held in Patty Place on the 9th of September 2017, and the petition quickly attracted over 5,000 signatures. The petition was then presented to the council at a full council meeting on the 18th of October 2017. And also at that meeting, the council adopted a motion, agreed unusually by all parties, on the future of the Avery Hill Winter Garden and the mansion. And that motion read, "Council notes public concern over the future of the Winter Garden and mansion following the decision of the University of Greenwich to vacate the site in 2018. Council believes this unique and listed heritage asset must be protected and restored with the revival of the bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund forming part of any redevelopment, and proper involvement of the local community in the future of the site. Council has long recognised the existence of 3 education covenants on the site and expects that an education tenant would be part of any redevelopment. Moreover, the council notes that the leader of the council is requesting a meeting with the university, the Winter Garden campaign lead and others to push the case to relaunch a new heritage lottery bid aimed at ensuring that the future of this hidden gem is assured. We also submitted 2 public questions asking the Council to ensure the upkeep of the maintenance of the Winter Garden and to insist that the Winter Garden remained open to the public after the university vacated the site. The Council was right in replying that the university had the ultimate responsibility of selling the site and maintaining it in the interim, but I did stress at the same Council meeting that the Council had a role to play in 4 important respects. Firstly, as custodian of the historical legacy of the Royal Borough of Greenwich. Secondly, as the planning authority for any development on the site, approving, modifying or rejecting any applications put to it. Thirdly, as a potential acquirer of the Winter Garden as a major cultural asset. And fourthly, as guarantor of the Winter Garden if it remained unsold when the university leaves the site. The efforts to involve the Council in finding a solution to the problem began to pay off. In January 2018, Councillor Danny Thorpe, the then Deputy Leader of the Council, convened a meeting with representatives of the University of Greenwich, Clive Efford, and I was invited to attend 2 meetings as a rep of the campaign group. And the Deputy Leader exerted considerable pressure on the university to make a significant financial contribution to the future of the Winter Garden. It was also around this time got the papers out of order there, but it was around this time that it emerged that the Education and Skills Funding Agency had expressed an active interest in buying the mentioned site for educational purposes and had made an offer to the University of Greenwich. Things went rather quiet after these 2 breakthroughs, and nothing seemed to be happening at all during the whole course of 2018. So at the end of that year, in December 2018, the campaign group submitted a question to the leader of the council at a council meeting asking for an update on any developments in the sale of the Avery Hill Mansion site and the safeguarding of the Winter Garden. The question elicited the following response. The university remain the owners of the Winter Garden site, and therefore the obligations upon them remain. I can assure you that the Council is having continued discussions with the university with the aim of safeguarding the Winter Garden. At this stage, I cannot provide further information as this is a commercial negotiation, and to do so would fetter the Council's position. The campaign group also sought to ascertain at this stage whether the new owner, the Education and Skills Funding Agency, would be prepared to accept public access to the listed parts of the mansion site as envisaged in the university's original bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund. Negotiations both between the ESFA and the university over the sale of the site and between the university and the Royal Borough of Greenwich over the reversion of the Winter Garden to the ownership of the borough dragged on into this year. On the 6th of June 2019, John Webb, Laurie Baker and I met Gary Herbert, the DFE project director, to gain some idea of the department's plans for a boys' secondary school on the site. We also used the occasion to press the case for public access to and community use of the historic parts of the mansion site, given that in the future the Winter Garden would be owned initially by the council, subsequently perhaps by a trust, and the mansion heritage assets would be owned by the ESFA and leased to the Harris Academy. Gary Herbert was receptive to this idea, and John Webb and I hope to meet him again early in the new year to learn more of the firmer and more detailed feasibility plans for the school and how the picture gallery and related areas can be accessible to the public within the new arrangements. Over this period, John and I have had several meetings with Len Duval of the Greater London Authority to help facilitate the dialogue with the council, to explore the possibility of the Winter Garden coming under the wing of the Greenwich Heritage Trust, which he chairs, and to consider the viability of other trust options for the management and operation of the Winter Garden in the future. Len is in the audience tonight, and we welcome him, and I'm sure he'll want to contribute at some stage to our deliberations. I'd also like to say that the two of the ward councillors, Nigel Fletcher and Pat Greenwell in the front here, have also lobbied articulately, actively and constantly within the corridors of power at the town hall to keep active, if you like, the achievement of the campaign's objectives. The other key event of this year was the council's decision to launch a consultation on the future of the Winter Garden at the Parks Fest event at Avery Hill Park on the 14th of July. Leaflets at the council stand confirmed that the Winter Garden would be reverting back to council ownership. And the leaflet said this: "We are currently in negotiations with the University of Greenwich to bring the Winter Garden back into council ownership and would like your views to help inform our negotiations. Please give us your ideas to help us restore the building to its former glory and transform it into a sustainable community venue. We want to shape the plans so that the Winter Garden is well used and residents can play an active part in transforming and running this local landmark." We understand that 1,500 responses were made to this consultation, and the council is now analysing those responses and will be holding another public event to share its proposed way forward. I think this may be within the coming few months, so we'll let you know when that meeting takes place, because that'll be an important stage, if you like, in the development of ideas for the future. The campaign made its own response based on three headings. The first was saving the Winter Garden. The second was continuing links between the historic mansion site and the Winter Garden itself. And the third heading was the impact of the proposed school on the heritage of the historic mansion site and the integrity of the park. So I think it's fair to say in conclusion that we have made real and substantial progress since July 2017. The council has, as we requested, pledged to take ownership of the Winter Garden. It has persuaded the university, as we urged, to make a significant financial contribution out of the profits from its sale of the site to support the restoration and development of the Winter Garden. We have made the council aware of the importance we attach to preserving public access to and community use of the listed heritage assets of the mansion site. And we have elicited an initial sympathetic response from the Department for Education to our request for access and usage. These are markers, and we will need to sort of push forward on those fronts when, in the new year, when a planning application is likely to come before the council. We now need to consider the impact of the proposed school on the heritage of the mansion site, on Avery Hill Park, and indeed on access to the park. The implications of the new development will need to be taken up vigorously when the planning application comes before the council. That's the overview, a sort of timeline, if you like, of everything that's happened between July 2017 and now. We obviously want to discuss all of those three issues: the future of the Winter Garden, the links with the historic site, the impact of the school on the park, the mansion site, the surrounding area. And I'll open that up to discussion in a few moments. But before I do that, I would just like to read out the statement, first of all, from Clive Efford. Clive says this: "I apologise for not being able to attend tonight's meeting. As much as I enjoy working with the local community on issues like this, I'm sure that everyone will appreciate with such important matters before Parliament, my place on this occasion is in Westminster. Let me state at the outset that all my efforts on this matter have been focused on the future of the Winter Garden and the gallery, to ensure that they are accessible to the public and to protect our valuable open spaces from too much development. Avery Hill Park has conceded a great deal to the university in the last 25 years, and I was not prepared to tolerate building housing on metropolitan open land. I argued from the outset for the continued use of Avery Hill for education use. My proposal was to move the sixth form of Crown Woods across the road to enable the school to expand. This would have enabled the continued use of the existing buildings, thus minimising the need for a major rebuild and giving value for public money. It would have enabled Crown Woods to expand and remove the need for a second school to be opened directly opposite the existing school. I've been involved in some of the discussions between the Council and Greenwich University over the past 4 years since the university announced it was leaving the mansion site. Throughout these discussions, I was delighted that the Council took a strong line to secure the future of the Winter Garden. They were very critical of the University's management of the Winter Garden. The Council had a condition survey commissioned, which resulted in the University having to carry out repairs that otherwise may never have happened. It is not possible to erase what has happened to the Winter Garden in the recent past, but we are now in a place where we can look forward to securing it for the future, working with the Council. The Council's uncompromising stance with the University has resulted in a large sum of money being secured, which will go a long way towards funding the Winter Garden and the gallery in the future. It is vital that we ensure the maximum public access to the gallery and Winter Garden throughout the year. It is a hidden gem and will attract visitors to the area. It could form part of a heritage trail that leads from the Mansion House past the Conduit Head, the Orangery and on down to the Palace or Tudor Barn. I know the Council is eager to work with the community to preserve these important architectural and cultural heritage assets, and I will continue to play my part in that as I have done throughout. As everyone knows, I'm always available to discuss this and other issues, so if anyone wants to contact me, please do not hesitate to do so. That's from Clive Efford then. This is a statement that conveyed an email to me that came from Katrina Delaney, who is the Deputy Chief Executive of the Royal Borough of Greenwich. And Katrina writes this: "The Council is committed to working with local residents and groups, as well as experts, in bringing heritage assets back into sustainable use. And the report is currently with finance and legal teams to enable us to use the outcome of our earlier consultation to move forward with further engagement with all of these groups. The sale is not expected to be completed for some months, but please be assured that we are developing a plan for how we go forward." So, I mean, I think the sale has almost gone through, but there's obviously I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, and hopefully at some point in the new year that sale will be a concrete matter. But what I'd like to...
I just want to read something I've got here on my phone from the time when the Council first opened it. So, on the 25th of May 1903, Avery Hill was opened as a public park by Lord Monkswell, chairman of the LCC at the time, in front of a crowd of thousands. And at that point it was the intention that the grounds and the lower floor of the house should be open for the use of the public on Thursdays and Saturdays. Some people in the council thought it was a bit of a white elephant, but Lord Monkswell declared at the time the County Council believed not only in meeting present requirements but in anticipating those of a succeeding generation. So, it was always intended that it should be open to the public, and that was at the time they acquired it. So that should still be paramount.
Yes. Thank you for that. So just on the Winter Garden and the future of that sort of enterprise before we bring Nigel in. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, John Lawton, Chair of the Ryfield Road Resident Association. Many of us in Ryfield have enjoyed the Winter Garden over many years. My children used to look on it as a wonderful asset and an educational tool, and so have my grandchildren. But we are also very concerned about the school, and we do wonder exactly why we're having a 900 plus boys school erected opposite a nearly 2,000 plus mixed sex school. And we're wondering, where are the children coming from, and what evidence is there to show that a school here will be able to take pupils from a local area? Or will we have a situation where we're going to add to pollution, etc., by having to bus lots of children in, causing particular congestion in the morning? Many residents cannot get out of their drives in the morning for the number of, unfortunately, rather irresponsible parents who park everywhere. And I would like the council to think very closely about this. If the school is going to exit into the Bexley Road, well, they've spent a lot of money on the cycle route there. I don't think there is any leeway to construct a lay-by in order the buses can align. So, and also we are concerned that the proximity of two schools, rival schools, may well lead to trouble. There is quite a stir when the school exit now. The police are often there, and they have two schools in proximity. I think isn't a very good idea.
Well, these are all issues that we need to take up at the planning stage, obviously. Nigel.
No, that's on. Well, thank you very much, Terry. As you said, I'm Nigel Fletcher, I'm one of the ward councillors for Eltham South Ward. Also here, Pat Greenwald, my colleagues, and Matt Clare is over there. I would also say, just in opening, our role here, and certainly my role here, I'm not here as the council. So I think we've had the statement from the council, from Katrina Delaney, the Deputy Chief Executive, and I think there is an important distinction here between us as representatives of the ward and the council leadership. Obviously we're supporting the campaign, and we have done for a long time. I also wanted to say that this is absolutely not a political issue in those terms. I see also we have a former colleague of ours here, former councillor for Eltham South, Eileen Glover, is here as well. This issue has long predated my time as a councillor for Eltham South, and I'd like to pay tribute particularly to Nuala Geary and Mark Elliott, our predecessors as councillors, who also were involved heavily in this issue. And they took the approach, and I've certainly taken the approach, that we want to work across parties. I think we had a meeting a couple of years ago where we literally had representatives of each of the political parties sitting around the table. There was the Liberal Democrat candidate, we had a Labour councillor, and us there. And I do think that's important because when we have these meetings with council leadership, there is a danger that this becomes politicised in a party political way. And I would like to think that we're kind of beyond that. I think everyone recognises this is something which your presence here this evening shows is of huge concern. And we've had even larger numbers, I think, in the past at public meetings as well, and will continue to do so. So that's the first thing. But we are here really to, and I'm glad the meeting is being videoed because it does mean that the full record of what you say here will be available to the council leadership. I've been taking notes and will do so as well, so we can feed those in. And the fact there's an empty chair next to me, I think that's not deliberate. We know that Clive Efford can't be here for unavoidable reasons, but also I know that the council have wanted to be very clear. They're not boycotting the meeting. This was a logistical issue, and I want to make that clear as well. As Terry said, there has been significant progress that we've made since the last public meeting. And so that's why we wanted to take this opportunity now, before any formal planning applications come forward, to just update people and to get views expressed. But whilst there are, as we've already heard, some really significant issues about the plans that are going to come forward, I think we should also note the amount of progress that's been made, which Terry outlined. Finally, the council are properly engaged, and it's a relief to me. I mean, sometimes it's great to stand up in the council chamber and have a go at them, quite often in fact, but it's even better to be able to actually get them to do what we want them to do, and to be able to support them in doing that. And at the last public meeting, for those of you who were there, that we had at the church hall on the High Street, we were told then that the council wouldn't step in, it wasn't anything to do with them, and it wasn't their issue. Well, they have stepped in, and they've agreed to take on the Winter Gardens. We were told the University of Greenwich wouldn't stump up the money, they were just going to sell it for as much as they could get for it, they wouldn't put any money forward. Well, they put the money in, and we were also told that the fact that housing was ruled out as part of the plan meant it was unviable, there was no way it could be restored. Well, it isn't, and there is a proposal now on the table that stands some chance of allowing the site to be properly used. So I think we should, as Len said earlier, congratulate ourselves on some significant progress. And that holds out some hope that we can get a result that we all want in future. And I think also we should thank all of you as well for keeping up the pressure. Those of you who've signed petitions, who've written in and who've given us their details so that we can keep you informed. That is going to be important as we move into the next stage. So please, if you haven't, please do make sure you leave your details so that we can update you when the consultation's open. I also, as I say, want to thank the Council and the University of Greenwich. It would be churlish of me not to thank them for doing what we said they should do. Obviously there are more that we want them to do in future, but we should thank them, and I'd like to thank Len as well for what he's done. The other thing that we have been successful in doing is registering the Winter Garden as an asset of community value. That was something that we achieved, was it last year, I think, and that is a legal status, which means that as the campaign group, we have a role in the future of the Winter Garden. Technically, what it means is that when the site is formally sold, they have to offer it to us first. I don't think we've got the requisite amount of money to take it on ourselves, but it does mean they have to formally consult us, and so that does give us a formal role in the process. And it indicates the level of interest there is in the site and its historic value. But its historic value as well as its value to the community. As an asset of community value, I think that means something, and that in itself I think is a powerful statement about how we want it to be used. Just briefly on the heritage value, as has already been mentioned, the glasshouse really is a hugely significant heritage asset in its own right, second only to Kew Gardens, and I think if you look at Kew Gardens compared to the Winter Garden, certainly as it would be if it was properly restored, I think Avery Hill is much more impressive with the brickwork and its setting in the park as well. I think it's a hugely significant building. And to be fair to them, I think the Council's consultation, where they were setting out potential plans and asking for people's views, it does recognise that. They have sort of images of how Kew Gardens is used and put it alongside that. And I think that is something which we should ensure is known about. I mean, I moved to the area sort of nearly 20 years ago now, and it was certainly some time before I discovered this gem on my doorstep. And I think those of us who know it, know how wonderful it is, there's a huge number of people locally who will never have heard of it. They'll know of Elton Palace, they'll know the Tudor Barn, they'll even know Seven Druid Castle perhaps. A lot of people don't know it's there. They'll have heard of Avery Hill Park, they won't know the building, and they certainly won't know its history and its significance. So there's a real untapped potential for it to become a proper heritage attraction and for it to be properly used. I won't go over in too much detail the state of play in terms of where we are now. I think Terry's covered that very well. But what I will say is the council consultation itself has closed. I'm sure many people will have contributed to that. That's now being considered. They will at some point come back with the results of that, and that will be an opportunity for us to have a say on how they see it, and so that will be one opportunity. But I think for the immediate future, the issue of the school is going to be, I think, the pressing point, because we know what the proposal is in broad terms for there to be a school there, Department for Education taking it on. That deal, unlike the deal with the council, has actually been agreed and is proceeding forward. So there will be pre-application consultation taking place, and then there will be a planning application, and that's where we can actually have a proper say on it. On a sort of procedural point on that, and I'm sure it's not a hugely groundbreaking announcement that I'm about to make, but those of you who know the way the planning process works, it goes to a planning committee of councillors who decide it on the basis of its merits. I'm on the planning board, which is the main planning committee of the council, and so ordinarily I would have a vote on it, I have to consider it, but the implications of that would be that I would have to be very quiet about what happens to it before then to avoid prejudging the decision. Given how long we've been campaigning on this and how involved I've been in the campaign, I've had to decide that I want to continue speaking out on it and continue lobbying the council on it. So I'm going to be recusing myself from that process so that I won't have a vote on the the final decision, but it will it mean that there'll be no question that the decision could be challenged and so on. That's just a technicality, but I think I need to mention that because if anyone knows the planning process and sees me as a member of the planning board speaking out on it, there may be some challenge to that. So having said that, I think that the issues, as far as I see them, for the planning application that's likely to come forward are about access, and they're also about the linkage between the two parts of the site. We now have a situation where the Winter Garden itself is being separated out from the mansion site and the historic buildings there. That's not ideal. When we looked at it before, our assumption had always been that to make it work as a heritage asset, you would need to have the Winter Garden itself, and you would need to have the picture gallery, the entrance hall, and you would need to have as much of the historic listed buildings as part of one site in order to market it as a heritage attraction, and frankly to get some revenue, weddings, events and so on, using those parts of it. So it wasn't ideal, I think, that it was divided up in the way it has been. The red line that's been drawn between the part that the DFE have taken on and the Winter Garden itself that the council's taken on does include some of it. I think the common room that's currently being used, which was the drawing room, is included in the part the council's taking over to give some aspect of sort of back office and another sort of ancillary room to it. But the picture gallery, the marble gallery and the entrance hall will be part of the DFE part of the site. So
Sorry,
I think,
can I just,
yeah.
what's about the listed lavatory?
And the lavatory as well, of course, the very famous
Which is
lavatory,
embedded
which
in,
is indeed,
in the,
yes,
educational
which very
part?
suspiciously survived the fire and the bombing. But the yes, so parts of that will also be outside of the council's part of the site, so that will be as part of the DFE's
But that is
responsibility.
actually apart from the other parts,
Yes,
isn't
it's separated out.
Yeah.
So when the plans come forward for the demolition of the 1960s buildings and so on, they'll have to come forward with their proposals for that.
Well, it survived the other demolition, didn't it?
Yes, indeed. Let's hope it
47
continues
or
to
whatever.
survive all of that. So there is an issue there with access, but one of the examples I look to is Dulwich College, where you've got a picture gallery there which is open to the public and is able to host events and so on. That's a school, and yet it functions as a visitor attraction in its own right. And I think in some ways, well, it's
No, that is
that right?
that is a separate.
It was a purpose-built
Okay.
gallery. Yeah.
Bad example then. I'll find another example. John's got a better example. Okay, but there is, I think, in principle, there is no reason why the fact that it's a school should preclude there being public access and community use of it. In some ways, and I know that the idea of it being a school at all is not to everyone's liking, but we have to work with what we've got. In some ways, the fact that a school will be closed over summer holidays, be closed at weekends, closed in the evenings, does allow for the times when it's not being used for a school, for it to be open for other events and to be open for the community. And that, I think, is the thing that we need to push for when the application is put forward. That the linkage between the heritage asset that the council takes on, the Winter Garden itself, and the picture gallery and the rest of the historic parts of the site should be able to be marketed and used as one site, and those linkages continue. And the other point is the community use of it. It is possible to put conditions on a planning application to require public access, to require there to be community usage, and the role of the trust that will take on the Winter Garden in overseeing that and how they work with the school on that, I think will be absolutely key to how it functions as a sort of sustainable asset. So all of those things will be things that the planning committee will have to consider, the planning board, but there is a sort of pressure point here. The way that these planning applications work is there is a pre-application process where there's discussion between council officers and the proposed applicant over the detail. And so I think having this meeting now and encouraging people to make their views heard is very important. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that there was no confusion over my role in it, because I do want to encourage people to talk to planning officers, to talk to members of the planning board, to insist that all of the issues, and I know the ones that John is going to talk about the specific challenges, and that we've already heard from Whitefield Road about the use as a school, are heard in the pre-planning process. If we wait until the application is there, there's often very little wiggle room about how the application can be changed. You either essentially have it voted through or you have it rejected. There is a pressure point in this pre-app process where we can have those sorts of issues heard. So all of the things that are said this evening, so I'm taking notes, it's being videoed, and I'm going to make sure that these things are properly put forward to the planners and to the council leadership. But I just wanted to make the point that there are, in my view, 3 things that I would want to be campaigning on to ensure they're part of the proposal for when the council takes on the Winter Garden, and also in the planning application for the school. Firstly, that it's a sustainable proposal, that there is a proper business plan that will support it, so we're not going to be in a situation in another 15, 20, 25 years' time of saying it's happened again, that the whoever's taken it on has allowed it to decline and decline, as happened with the university, that it should be a sustainable proposal to safeguard its future. That secondly, there should be an absolute focus on investment in restoring it. The Heritage Lottery bid that was prepared and ready to go a number of years ago, all the work was done then. It's still really ready to go, although there is this issue of it having been split, but that needs to go back to them, and as part of the proposals for the future, that needs to be an absolute priority to ensure that there is the prospect of further investment in it. And lastly, as I've said at great length, the community use of the site, making that a condition, and also public access to link the 2 parts of the site. And those things under the planning process are achievable, and if you want to have a say on that, then please do contact me, contact the campaign group, and my colleagues Pat and Matt, to ensure that we can pass those on and demonstrate that this level of interest is quite phenomenal, and that it's not going away. But there are practical things that we can do. Those are the 3 issues I think are most important to me. I'm sure there are many others as regards the school and so on, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Any responses?
Yeah. Can I just, yes, I'm Pat Greenwell. Can I just say that we really need to make sure that there is a full public consultation on the school, because sometimes these things, go, but there has to be a full public consultation at some point.
Yeah, and I think that obviously there will be the planning process, as you know, when that application comes forward. But as I say, the important thing is not to wait till then. I think it is to ensure that that all of the concerns that are being raised are raised in the pre-application process as well.
Just say, could I take Pat over here?
I'm stepping back a bit. I don't quite understand how it's arrived that the Winter Garden is being separated from the other historical elements. It seems absolutely daft to me that should have happened. How did that come about?
Well, basically,
Who insisted that it should be divided as it's proposed?
it's come about because the university basically owned the site, and that's
Yeah, I understand that.
that's what they've decided to sell.
But how could the council not push them to sell it in such a
Well,
way that it
I'll
makes
come on to that. There's been a lack of strategic grip from the council from day one. They're now playing catch up, and the question is, when can we play catch up quickly enough to remedy what was lost in the 2 or 3 years after the university said they were going to sell? And that's our key aim. But you're absolutely right in what you say.
Yeah, but there's a broader problem, because I think the university didn't think they'd be able to sell the whole site, that nobody would want to take on the responsibility, the liability of actually maintaining and running the Winter Garden. If we're honest, that's the real reason. So that's why it's split. What we've got to do is to sort of try to ensure that although there will be dual ownership of what was the mentioned site, that those connections, what Julie calls the processional route, is actually kept alive and honoured. And that's the really important fight, I think, at the next stage. I think somebody at the back there was wanting to come in.
Can I come in on that? Sorry.
Well, let's try to get the public one.
Can you just tell me, please, if the Winter Garden is listed separately from the rest of the historical area, or if it's one listing? If it's one listing, was it legal to separate them?
It is one listing.
listed as one.
This is one listing, but that doesn't affect the ownership or sale of it.
No. And I think, just to come in on that as well, I think the first we heard that it was being split was when the council finally came forward with their proposals to say that they were going to take it on. One of the frustrations has been that, as we heard from the answer we got from questions, these were commercially sensitive discussions and we weren't allowed to be told what's going on. So it was frustrating, but this was presented as a fait accompli. And it is the responsibility of the University of Greenwich. I mean, they decided how they wished to proceed, and they were negotiating with the council, and that's what emerged from those negotiations. They didn't open that up for understandable reasons, but we now have a process that we can be involved in, and I think we need to push on that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm just anxious to bring people who haven't spoken in yet before I ask those who have already spoken to come back again.
Oh, hello. My name's Maureen Glynn. I was born, bred and lived in Elton all my life. It's sad maybe, but I've enjoyed it and I'm proud of being in Greenwich. I went to Alderwood Primary School, I went to Crownwoods Secondary School, I went to Avery Hill College. I became a teacher, I taught in Greenwich schools and secondary, so I've been involved in quite a bit, and I'm well done to all those who've been involved. I feel quite guilty that it's the first time I've shown my face and my concern. The Winter Gardens and the mansion, I've visited many times and have enjoyed them. And I've noted how they've gone down and down and down, and think I must get involved. But you know, I have read and heard that people are doing something about it. My biggest concern, I've spoken to Clive Efford, I've spoken to Matt Clare about my concerns and to find out what they were doing. Because I thought these are the people in places that should be doing something about it. It's all well and good having academies, because this is what most schools now are becoming, academies or part of a trust, and they have then their commitment, I mean, because it is all financial. They want to then, after the children go there to school, it's then given out to rent for clubs, etc. And this again would be part of what would happen with it coming Harris Academy. I'm just concerned. I mean, that would be 2,000 at Groundwoods that said I went to school there, been involved in it. Then another 1,000, 900, 3,000, let's round it up, will be pupils there. That's a big concern. As in having taught in secondary schools where there have been some near each other and having to go out on duty to watch what's happening. That's in years gone past, let alone now. But one of the things I put across to Clive Efford and to Matt Clare, I mean, with educational, yes, I'm all for it. You know, it's so important, and state education, not private necessarily, state education. What are we doing for special needs? I mean, wouldn't that be a good area to think about that area? You know, then Crownwoods could become involved in, get more, they're integrated as much as possible. Children with special needs are included in state schools, and that is fantastic. But when it comes to that stage where they might not be suitable in a state school as such, special needs, I think, would be a good thing that the Royal Borough of Greenwich should be proud of if that could make that a special educational area for children in the borough, where I think there are needs for them, you know, whatever that need is, whether it's education, whether it's because of disability, whatever. I think that'd be an important area. Also, it could be for music children with special talents. Maybe it could go for something on those lines. That maybe when they, you know, when they come to year 9 and you see they've got this flourishing ambition or arts, craft, whatever, there may be some link there. As I said, having gone to Avery Hill College, I saw the different areas, the art, the gymnastics, the different parts of the buildings there already, which are quite, I mean, fair enough, they've got to be knocked down, some of them are in need of. But of course, the Winter Gardens, you know, fantastic, they've got to be held on to. The mansion, I mean, Mastermind was there all those years ago as well. So, I mean, it has
and
got...
David Bowie. And David Bowie.
Yes.
No, thanks for that. But
Yes, so
I
I
mean,
was
the
just
issue,
saying, it's just an area I think that's got to be seriously considered. You're saying about the planning application's already gone through, but that is just...
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
Hasn't yet.
No.
So
This is the point. It hasn't come out yet. So we need
so
to.
Are there only is it only just that offer at the moment, that planning application at the moment?
It's not come forward yet.
It's not from Harris Academy, it's not come forward
They've
yet.
bought the site. They've not brought forward a planning application.
We're expecting that to happen in the new year, yeah, probably not immediately in January, but a bit further towards March, April. But the important thing is that we keep you in touch about that, because I think...
Clive Efford, when I spoke to him,
Yeah.
you know, I hope he don't might not repeat what he said, because I asked about this, he made a point of saying that there isn't a shortage in secondary schools at this moment of time. I mean, I know there might be in the future.
That is certainly a key issue. In fact, there are 400 or 500 vacancies at year 7 at the moment, and there's a lot of doubt as to whether this school is needed at all, and certainly not in this location, which is a long way from the expanding populations. And if you're looking at sustainable travel plans, is it sustainable to put a school 10 miles from where the population is? These are questions that obviously will need to be explored in the next few months, but it's not illegitimate to ask those questions.
But you're saying about the school being built in 2021, they hope to have it ready by then?
That's what the hope is.
That's what they say.
But in turn, as someone else mentioned, surely the priority now is if winter gardens are going to be saved, and I remember when the banana tree was there and bananas and everything, so my memories of it, I mean, surely that is priority, that should be started ready, because I hate to think when the bulldozers come in, you know, they might be near the winter gardens, you know, the person...
Well, what the council's saying very clearly is that they hope within the next 4 or 6 months the deal to take back ownership of the Winter Garden will be completed. And now with the kind of dowry, if you like, from the University of Greenwich and the search for additional funds as well, we would be looking at the way that we can restore, rehabilitate, innovate in terms of the profile, the focus of the Winter Garden. So that'll go forward as soon as we know that the sale has been totally confirmed. But we're not far off that. I think we've more or less cracked the one. Well, somebody over there wanted to go in yet.
This is a bit concerned. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be against the Winter Garden. It's a brilliant project. But another 900 pupil school is not going to work. I mean, already in Rifle Road, every day there is absolute chaos. It takes 20 minutes to get up to the high street. All of the pavements on the bottom houses are broken, so they park outside on the curbs. They park on our driveways, they park on the cycle lanes. There's police there regularly to try and cope with it. They're putting into the gate to the park and blocking the road. You said earlier on when that gentleman asked about would the Winter Gardens be done after the event, you went, no, they're going to have it done by 2010. That sounds, 2020, sorry, that sounds a little bit like it's going to be round-roaded through. Now, I for one, I'm going to object really strongly against the school being built there, because already the roads cannot cope with the traffic, the increased noise, the pollution. You're going to have extra policing, you're going to have extra buses, you're going to have the extra kids' parents driving their cars to bring them to school. If the catchment area is going to be larger, because they won't be local, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I think it's important that anybody here, when that comes out, we object to it strongly. Don't just ignore it, just stop it.
Anybody else that's present? Could we take people who haven't said anything yet, because I really want to get as many people contribute. Over there.
Dave Mark of Local Residents, can you clarify for me, because getting back to Winter Gardens, you talked about British Council taking ownership, and then you talk about it forming a trust. They haven't. So that trust is going to be a profitable organisation going forward?
No, it's not a profit making.
So is it going to be a community trust where tenants will be nominated to the board and they have full power? Because, as you rightly say, Greenwich have sort of messed up a few times along the few years, and so the full power of that board will be lodged with local residents.
Well, I think this hasn't been sorted yet. This is an issue that the council put in its consultation document that was at the 14th of July event, and people could have responded to that. We're now waiting for the council to come back. But I think what they probably envisage is that there would be a trust specific to the Winter Garden. You know, it would be a trust that looked at Winter Garden. And I think they've said very clearly that they would want local representation on it. You know, and they were inviting people to volunteer in the consultation document that was issued on the 14th of July. They would also, I think, want to make sure that there's a good representation of appropriate experts, you know, in the field of heritage, conservation, the law. You can name whatever sort of profession, speciality you could think of, because that trust would need to actually reflect the expertise that you'd need to actually manage that type of institution.
That's a good thing. We all know that voting rights are 50% or 51% or whatever. And I think if we wanted a community trust for this, we should make sure that the community have the power of the maximum voting rights, because we've seen before where they've given it to Greenwich Council and other Greenwich University, and they haven't implemented what they should do. I think if we're doing this now, there's money for it, this should be lodged with the local community, have full control.
Can I just...
Just Eileen. Yeah,
Thank you very much. Eileen Glover, past councillor for Elton South. The heritage bid that dropped when the university dropped it is going to be crucial. It's going to be very difficult. I mean, the strength of this bid was the linkage with the Green Chain Walk and the Winter Gardens being a destination for the Green Chain Walk and the other destinations in Eltham. The problem is with this resurrecting this bid is that because you've got a planning application going through and the linkage with the other listed heritage bits within the mansion site, it will be difficult to link those two together. The Heritage Lottery will look for linkage within that in looking at the bid, and it's going to be how that is fought at the planning stage and actually getting a strong link and commitment to link the two together. So it's when the heritage bid goes forward, you can actually say that you have linkage within the mansion site to the other assets within that site for public access and for actually linking it to the Winter Garden and making it a whole bid and a whole sort of destination. Thank you.
Fine. All right, I'll take Judy first. So she's chafing at the bit, and then Pat.
I'm sorry to keep on about it, but the point I want to make is about the planning consultation. Planning officers, I've got great experience of this. Planning officers will turn around and say they have very limited powers to ask for consultation, and the powers that they have are usually understood to be that they must ask for consultation once there are plans. And I've just sat recently on a scrutiny panel project. If full council says, on this occasion, we want consultation before plans are made, then the planning officers have the authority to say, in this borough, our council is asked for this. And I do urge everybody to write to the chair of planning board and say, we want consultation before there are plans to discuss. We want consultation about the concept, so that you get your consultation in earlier.
The DFE have said that they will do that.
Well, I think I
said
make sure it's in writing.
The DFE have said in writing that they will do that.
We'll see that. I'm chairing, you know. Pat, thank you, Judy.
I've lost the momentum now. Just going back to that gentleman who said that you don't want anything to be railroaded through. It will not be railroaded through, but all I will say is, to all of this, what you're discussing tonight, keep that passion going, write it down, and when this application comes to planning, you will be informed, because I'm sure that, we've got all your names and everything. Then is your opportunity. You will have 21 days in which to object, and that's when you need to get all your passions that I've heard tonight down on paper and send it either by email or hard copy to the planning committee. And also you can ask for speaking rights. That gentleman there, you were so passionate you could speak, or John, on behalf of the residents committee in Ryfield Road. That's when you will have your opportunity to all your feelings and everything that you're coming out with tonight. That's what you need to do, and get them to, you'll have 21 days. Yeah? Is there anything else I need to add about the planning there, Nigel?
Sorry, can I just come back on that?
No, just a minute.
I've spoken before, but this is quick. You're saying it won't be railroaded,
No.
but I've seen Grove Marketplace, that was railroaded through, and there was hundreds of objections to that. I went along to the meetings, lots of people speaking against it. All they did was they took 2 levels off it and then rubber stamped it, and that was the end of the discussion. So So if they want to, they will push it.
This is the next issue that we've really got to take up, and we've got to be vigorous and active and persistent in what we do.
Very quickly. Very quickly on that, I think Pat's right, there is a formal process. I think Julie's point is absolutely crucial though, that the extent to which the applicant has to do consultation before the application goes in is usually up to them or up to the council. I think your point is absolutely right, that if we can make a noise to say we want there to be as much consultation before the application as possible. John has just said that the DFE have said that they are committing to do that. I think though you're right, we should at this stage make it clear we want a maximum amount of consultation in that process. You've all seen them when there's an application coming forward, they have an exhibition somewhere, you go along and see the proposed plans. That all happens before this 21 days, before the application is formally put forward. They have the power to do that, and I think we should ensure that we have the opportunity to do that beforehand. I think that's a really important point.
Before you get to that
Exactly.
stage.
I think that's a really important point, which I certainly will take away, but also I think you should all, as Julie says, write to the Chair of Planning and to the Council to say we want that.
Okay, fine. Gentleman over there has been very patient.
Thanks ever so much. Can I just thank you for all the help that you've given so far and all that you've done in helping this campaign. I'm most grateful. I would certainly like to see the gardens placed back into their original state and for the purpose for which it was intended, i.e. for the plantation, unusual plants, etc., etc. With regard to the so-called academy, a number of people have voiced their opinions concerning the parking, and to me this is crucial because the state of our roads on this estate in Eltham Heights has ruined a lot of our properties, to be honest. If one was to come down Avery Hill Road and see the volume of traffic of students using the university to go up and down trying to find a parking space. When they can't find a parking space, they'll go over your white lines if you've got one, and some, and it's happened to us, even parked up the drive. And when we got in touch with the police, they said it was a matter for the council, and when I got in touch with the council, they said, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it because it's a matter. You have to go to the courts, and the court will have to make an order. It's not something the police can do. So if you phone the police and say there's a car parked in my drive, they won't come down and get the person and move it out. So we were blocked the whole day waiting for the student to come out of the university to be able to gain access to the road. In order to be able to reverse from the main road in Avery Hill into your drive, it is devil's own job. I don't care, I'm all in favour of education and universities and academies, but the current situation, regardless of the academy, is just unacceptable. And the council, despite all their efforts in trying to sort out the parking and all the consultations we've had, where has it got us? Where has it got us? Are we any better off? No. We've still got the same problem. Cars parked over our drives and we cannot get in. And something has to be done, either before or during the planning, to make absolutely certain that the parking facilities are utilised within the university or within the grounds of the Harris Academy. If they're going to use the car park within the grounds that you mentioned, that they may turn into a sports field or whatever, where's the public going to go when they go to the hothouse? They're going to park in the street. Where's the people going to go from the academy? They're going to park in the street. So we've got another load of people that are going to go up and down to try and find somewhere to park. And if they can't park in Avery Hill Road, they'll go up to Eltham Heights and try and park up there. We're all in the same boat and we're stuffed, because the council will do what the council want to do.
That point well made re-emphasises again the importance of our involvement, our participation in the whole pre-planning and planning process. But we are now sort of moving into that area which is really about the impact of the proposed school upon the area. And we've actually said very clearly to the DFE manager that we wouldn't want the construction and design of a new school in any way to undermine the heritage of the existing site. And obviously there's lots of issues about access that need to be looked at as well. But if I can ask John to come in, because he's going to introduce the broader points about the ramifications of a school on that site, on the infrastructure of the area.
Yeah, start off with a few thank yous. Firstly, for coming along tonight on a very cool night. And secondly, to Terry, who has come on board since our last meeting, has been our chair for 2 years and tried his best to keep them under control. Doesn't always succeed, but that is very much appreciated. And Nigel, who's taken a close interest in becoming ward councillor. And Len Duval, who's been a very, very engaged member of the London Assembly for this area and goes back a long way on Avery Hill. With that having been said, over the last 10 years, the park, as I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure you go there a lot, has improved an awful lot. We've made a lot of improvements. The Mayor's Fund was a huge advantage. We were able to replace the railings on the Avery Hill Road, helped pay for the new cafe, the new games area, and more planting. There's a new outdoor gym, which is good. The circular path, I'm sure you'll all agree, has made it much, much more accessible for all sorts of people, for all sorts of activities. The terrace garden has been improved. It was neglected before, it's now got somewhere. Looks okay. And the cafe area and play area have been much improved this summer with the council's neighbourhood grant application. And a safe picnic area, which was Pat Greenwell's idea, has now been created. We've planted more than 600 trees and an emerging woodland on the south field. And all these improvements, the Friends Group have been integral with the council working together to make those improvements. But of course, the jewel in the crown is the Winter Garden. And the Friends were bitterly disappointed when the lottery bid fell through and the university decided to withdraw from the whole mansion site, including the magnificent galleries, which not all of you perhaps will have seen, and I certainly hadn't until 2 or 3 years ago, and I was blown away. And I was lucky enough to be able to show Clive Efford that recently, and he was blown away too, because he'd forgotten what it looked like. And I think if you can remind yourself of what it looks like, we'll do some guided tours later in the autumn when we can look around again. The disappointment of the lottery bid falling through turned to despair when the council failed to take a strategic grip of the whole site, and for 2 or 3 years just said it was a matter for the university, which, while strictly speaking was true, was an abdication of their responsibility for the strategic asset, historic asset that was on their patch. So we're playing catch up basically, and as Pat over there said, why have those two assets been divided? They shouldn't have been. But it's not too late, so we've got much more engagement now. I was very, very pleased to hear the statement from Katrina Delaney and the council welcoming the Friends group, the group's active participation. It's the first time she's shown any indication whatever of that, not having involved us in anything up to now at all. I'm very grateful for Len Duval for having brokered the last 2 meetings we've had with the council, because all our efforts to get a meeting with the council have been rebuffed over a 5-year period. And my 11.5 feet size feet and about 11 size 11 by having to stuck my foot in the door for 5 whole years to get any kind of take up from the council in terms of, despite the fact we've got a 5,000 name petition, we really haven't had very much involvement or much, I won't say like gratitude, you don't really expect that, because we're all voluntary in our roles here. What are the problems if a school goes there? Well, I'll start off by saying that, go back at the Winter Garden, and we've heard about the Grange Heritage Trust and the problem it's had with the assets they've been given, and that just shows what happens when a trust is given assets without any sustainable, viable form of income. And this is a point we made to the council for 5 years. where's the income coming from to run a winter garden? And you can get a dowry, but the dowries run out, and so where is that sustainable income? The Heritage Lottery Fund were adamant that it had to be linked with the magnificent galleries, turned into one, and there are 3 what are now considered secret passages from the historic mansion site into the winter garden. So each bit of the winter garden, each of the 3 parts, has a physical link which is currently blocked. And whatever is done, those 3 links must be made to increase the flexibility of that space, different sorts and sizes, and a variety of events that could go on there. That is an absolute must. The problem at the moment is that Harris Academy are saying they want the whole of that, those galleries. They consider they're buying them and that they're theirs. And so there's got to be a massive change of attitude on their part, and that's got to come out in the planning process. That's what it's one of our things we're completely dedicated towards doing. What would the school do if it was sited there? Well, the question is, we did meet the architect from the DFE, and it's clear that it was at that stage of being very early in his consideration and understanding of the site. For example, he hadn't at that site time fully understood that the main vehicle access to the park was through what he considered to be his site, and headed down towards the cafe, which we now know to be the main, the car park, which is the main car park for the park. He hadn't fully understood that that was going to be happening through his site, and we've heard what the chaos is at school going home time. You said 900 people, so they're talking 1,100. It's not 900, it's 1,100. How is that going to be managed in conjunction with parking for the park? And you could say already Granwood's parents use Avery Hill, they go through the West Lodge, and quite rightly, from their point of view, they use it as a bit of a taxi rank in there. Clearly Harris Academy won't want Granwood's cars coming in here, but how are they going to tell one from the other? And how are they going to tell a school picking up person from somebody who wants to use the park? I don't see how it's going to work, so we're looking with great interest to see what our friend Gary Herbert's going to come up with in the new year. But that's very high. I don't want to use that as a blocker for the school, necessarily, but I just want somebody to explain to me how that's going to work. How is it going to look? Schools normally come with railings. Every school I've seen has got fairly big railings, and normally about 2 metres high, often with fairly spiky things on top. This is supposed to be a heritage asset we've got here. How's it going to look with railings around it with big spikes on? It's not what I expect to see when I expect to go to a heritage asset, to see railings around it. And I'm not saying it'll look like some kind of prison camp, it needn't look like that. We do need to look very closely at how that is going to look in heritage terms. I'm not saying it can't be done, but that's going to be a very important factor. What will the buildings look like? We all know that age of austerity and that, we need more school places. Yes, of course we do. But what's the fees paid for architects? And when the Conservative government came in, you might say quite rightly, they said not having any more £50 million purpose-built Crown Woods is going on. We're going to do it like Lego form, and it's about quarter of the price. That's fine as far as it goes, but do we really want a Lego-style building next to one of the most important heritage assets of the borough? I don't think so. That's going to have to be very, very carefully designed. It's going to be sympathetic. The current university buildings are actually incredibly well designed, and they do fit in very nicely. But what would a kind of a breeze block style or purpose-built, whatever the word, system-built building look like bang next to a winter garden? It's got to be sympathetic. When you add all those problems together with the school, you start saying, well, is this the best place for school at all? And I leave that question mark hovering over the audience, because I know my colleagues here don't want to go any further on that. And I think it is a question we need to bring out in the planning stage as to whether a school is the best solution to this. I was very interested in Clive's comments. I was deconstructing that and reading the language very carefully. I would say the word, I know it's a phrase, constructive ambiguity involved in that. He wanted a sixth form there. That's not going to happen. So does he want a school that's not a sixth form there? I think we need to be a bit more build up the constructive element of that and a bit less of the ambiguity. And I mean, he has come on board very strongly, more strong than he had before, and he's engaging with us, which is good. But I do think we need to have a clear steer from him as to whether does he think that school is appropriate, and does he think that questions I'm asking are being addressed, taking this forward. Now Nigel gave an example there, which the example I want to give is Horniman's Museum. Now I took, and Park, and I took my daughter there when she was about 11, that's 20 odd years ago, and a sadder looking place you've never seen. It was horrible, and the lovely old museum, Mr. Horniman's, I'm sure Gordon can give us a history there, but Mr. Horniman's did a great job. That was 100 years ago, but when I took my daughter there, it was a dump. There was no doubt it was a dump. And at some stage, I think the Horniman's Trust decided to get a grip on that, and I don't know if any of you have been there more recently. It's absolutely magnificent. It's a fantastic example. I think we should stop. Can I just say at this stage, can we please stop talking about Kew Gardens? Avery Hill is not going to be Kew Gardens. It never was Kew Gardens, and it's not going to be Kew Gardens. Kew Gardens is not an example of what Avery Hill is ever going to look like, and there are not many lessons from Kew Gardens that we can learn, other than that, as Nigel says, ours is better. But it's not a template for what we're doing here. A better template is Elton Palace, in fact. I'd like to think what that would be as a boys' school, but unfortunately it went straight from the army without touching the sides and straight to its heritage, and amen to that, because it did an awful lot better than... There's more in Elton than people think. We haven't got enough confidence in ourselves. And look at Elton Palace those years ago, when that was a bit sad too. If I remember going there when Gordon will tell us again, I used to go there on my bicycle on Sunday afternoons. It was only up for 2 hours and nobody else was there. That was 20 years ago, just look at it now. What we need to do at Avery Hill is have a bit of ambition, a bit of belief in ourselves, and a bit more cooperation from those people in authority interacting with us, the people who know the history, have got a love for that part, want their very best for it. Up to now, as I say, my foot has got sore trying to get through the door and to get any attention at all. That has got to change. And if Len can help us do that, Terry with his more emollient ways than mine can get us through that door, that's what we've got to do. And so I'm very grateful that you could come tonight.
You were there a few weeks ago, John. You were actually in the room.
I was actually in the room on a meeting that I've been seeking for a year and a half, and it was good. We had a satisfactory meeting, but we are making progress. Let's bring the BMX on through Terry, bring the BMX group in, because not only do we risk losing a very substantial multicultural enterprise with 25 staff from the site, which hasn't been mentioned yet, but with that enterprise might leave the borough as things stand. We might also lose a very important community asset, which is the BMX track. But before I sign off, I would very much like anyone with interest in the site to put your name down and join our committee. We do need fresh blood. We need as much blood as we can, and it's going to be quite hectic. It's been on a slow burn for about 5 years, but it's now going to start heating up. So we do need you to come forward at the end of the meeting and say, yes, I do want to be on the committee, with all sides reflected, including local residents who have got payment issues, and I've observed that last week or two closely. Get involved, do come along, because we need as many people as we can. So signing off, I do again pay tribute to Terry for his attention, and so keep him under control, which is not easy, and Nigel for his input too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Safeguarding issue that the school is obliged legally to comply with. So, we are talking about very different types of access to the park for the general public. It is a fine building. It is a gem in this borough, and I'm really upset that the council is not actually seeing it as an asset, a community asset for the people who live here. That park is used by children, parents with small children in buggies like I used to. My kids are now in their 30s, but they all went to that park. We've done a lot of work to it, as John said, to try and improve the vegetation and the care of it. And I get a bit depressed when I pass the Winter Garden. The trees in there that, are from different parts of the world are all kind of, dying for want of attention. And the university hasn't really paid a lot of attention to maintaining the vegetation in that Winter Garden. So, it is a serious thing, and I would like to see perhaps some involvement from the schools around the park, the primary schools, all those parents use the park in half terms, the football clubs. My grandson plays football in the park. You know, all those people need to be supporting us in moving this forward. I personally do not think it's suitable for an all-out school. I think that will pose problems for community access and community involvement. And yes, the council does need to talk to the people in the area and the people who use the park more closely. There are ways of getting people involved and having an opinion about what they would like to see for the park. So it may be that we need to do a bit more publicity to get people to understand what is going to happen, because once it gets taken over and the architects move in, we're not going to have a lot of say. It'll be said and done. So I would encourage everyone to, you know, spread the word, and please, you know, any parents or friends, you know, who use the park, just to let them know what's happening and that we really need to fight to keep this gem. I mean, I would recommend, if John can organise more visits, you really have to see inside that building. It is absolutely amazing. So, you know, that's what I'd like to say. And just to thank John and Terry and Nigel for, because John, he has had his foot in the door for 5 years, and we really have not had a lot of engagement from the council in respect of the people of the area and the general public who use that park. Thank you.
I've only been using the park since 1953, when I lived at Plumstead. My grandmother was taught there to be a teacher, and she was the one that encouraged me to come over to use the park. There is many things that can start to be done now. Apart from joining the organisations, the council could turn round now and make the gates closed between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning at both ends, which will stop a lot of the rat runs avoiding the lights, and also people using it just to park and drop off children for the current school. So if we put that in now, when the application goes in, it's already established that they cannot bring cars in between 7:30 and 9:30, and it leaves it between 9:30 and 3 o'clock for people that want to use the park and the cafe. This will show the proposed Harris Academy that there is a serious problem with traffic. This might put them off slightly, wanting to bring their staff cars in, so they've got to make arrangements for the staff cars, because they won't be able to get in unless they're in before 7 in the morning and after 5 in the evening. And I know a lot of teachers do work those hours. I'm not blinded by the fact that my family's been involved in teaching. But if that is put in this year, not waiting till next year, but this year, it can have an influence on what happens in the future. It can also upset a lot of people I know. It is going to upset students that like to drop off their mates at the current site. Bad luck. But we've got to do that now, not, oh, we can put that off for a bit longer. Greenwich Council is like Woolwich Council. Woolwich Council did as little as possible in Eltham and New Eltham during their reign over us. It was Royal Eltham, it was Royal Greenwich. Woolwich always got left out. Now it's part of Greenwich, it can call itself Royal. But we need to show that Eltham is a force to be reckoned with, and we want things to happen. There's a chap said about parking. If someone's parked on your drive is private property. But if you're trying to get out to take someone to a hospital, you need to get a vehicle moved. The police have the power to move that vehicle. So okay, if someone parks on your driveway, they can come along and tow it off because you've got to get to the hospital. That's about the only thing you can actually get the police to do. So okay, you're going to visit the hospital quite a bit. So what? It'll certainly tell the students that they can't park there. Also, put gates on. Stop them getting into the driveway in the first place. But the law says that if anyone is blocking your driveway and you want to get out, the police can move them. If you want to get into your driveway and it's being blocked, the police won't do a thing.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other responses?
Qualify something, in case I've created a misunderstanding. Yes, if the car is parked on the highway blocking your drive, then yes, you can get it moved. If it's actually in your drive because it's private ground, neither the police nor the council, when I phoned and made representation, would do anything about it. They said it's a civil matter and you have to take the person to court.
And with respect to the gentleman there, between the hours of 7:30 and 9, surely all the cars that previously going to university will come out and block more drives in Eltham.
They wouldn't be able to park there then,
Yeah, they'll get fed up with bringing their cars in.
Okay, I'm just a bit conscious that we don't get
Sorry, can I just qualify something else, in case people don't realise it here? Living opposite the university, I and my wife have been over there several times during the height of the season of the university, and the car park within the university has been nearly half empty because the students have to pay to park, whereas at one time, of course, as the council well knows, they never had to pay. So in order to avoid going into the university to pay, they just go round the streets hoping to find a space to park. Hence you're getting your drives blocked in, and it's going to get worse with another school on its doorstep.
Well, these are all issues that we must spend. I'm just a bit conscious that people are beginning to move away, which is probably a sign that 9 o'clock is more or less the length of time that people think is manageable. But I'm quite anxious to bring our friend here in who wants to say a few words about the BMX operation, which is within the grounds of...
It is. It's at the western end of the mansion site. We've been there over 20 years. We're the only real facility like it in London, definitely the largest, and we don't really know what's going on. We've been there over 20 years. We've got a lease with the university, but that's now transferring, so we haven't had any contact from potential new owners. So we've had a meeting with Clive. This is quite interesting. He asked the House of Commons Library about our status, and they've advised that we do have a potential legal right to remain there because we've been there so long. So that's something we're going to have to explore. But we've made a little video because a lot of you might not have seen it, and so.
All right, we'll switch this on.
The future's a bit uncertain, so we need a bit of clarity, really. Don't suppose that'll be forthcoming anytime soon, but yeah, we're not really looking to leave. And good luck with your kind of bid for the Winter Gardens. I was hoping maybe Greenwich Council would step in and make it a proper facility for us and take that over and use some of the money, but yeah, I don't know. The ball's just started to get rolling, and we'll just see.
Well, I suspect that the DFE didn't really realise when they actually put in an offer for the building that they were actually taking on the BMX.
Well, they should have done.
It shows you the complexities of actually managing that.
They should have done, because we have a lease with the university.
I know you have, yeah, and the university should have told them, but you probably have. But anyway, you've got to stick in there through all the kind of planning stages.
Yeah.
So many thanks for that. Any final points that people want to raise? Eileen?
Yeah, just very quickly. I mean, have you talked to the trustees of the Paris Academy? I mean, the academy itself is obviously run by a CEO and professional people, but behind them are the trustees. And trustees are quite sensitive. I mean, have you lobbied them? Do they know how you feel?
No, no.
Especially about the heritage link between the Winter Garden. So do they know about that? Have you actually...
Well, we haven't had direct meetings with the trustees of Harris Academy because it's quite a complicated arrangement, because the people who are actually buying the site is the Department for Education in terms of their academies division, and the people we're linking into are the operation managers for that. They have obviously told the Harris Academy of those discussions, but we haven't met them yet. But in a sense, I think that's not a bad thing at the moment, because I think we've got more chance of a fair hearing from the DFE, who actually own the site at this stage, than we might from a rather ruthless, outcome-geared head teacher or executive principal of an academy, you know, because I think they may be less sympathetic to continued community use and public access to that building. So what we want to do very clearly is to make that case known to the DFE, and but I think they have said very clearly, Gary Herbert has, that he would want us, as they begin to consult on this, to meet with the Harris Academy trustees as well. So that has been raised.
Just to remember that the executive of the Harris Academy and the trustees are different. And the trustees, you may find, are more open to the sensitivity of actually the linkage, not of actually developing the school, I mean, that's a different matter, but actually the linkage between the heritage bits of the mansion site and the Winter Garden. They might see the publicity of doing that and making it good, and they're very sensitive to that.
But that's a useful point, Eileen. We will pursue that through. And I mean, interestingly, you know, there's all kinds of arguments about whether that school should be there or not, or what the likely catchment area for it is to be. You know, but the DFE clearly think that the heritage aspects of the mansion site might be attractive to potential parents of students who might come there, and I think they're sort of selling that as part of the appeal of the school. But we want to say, look, this, you know, the importance of those heritage assets go far beyond the school. It's really a kind of community asset which we want to sort of continue to be in the public domain, and we will press very hard for that, and the council's aware of that, and it's very much the centre of our lobbying now. Matt, and then the person at the back there.
Thank you, Terry. I just wanted to say as well, CJS Plants, I've spoken with Charles there, he's been given a very short period of time. It's unacceptable, it's very difficult for him, very expensive for him to move his business. I've said I'll support where I can, although I'm limited, but if we can factor that in. And if I can very briefly come back to the parking which David mentioned, it's a much wider subject which many of us in this room are aware of, so I won't go on too long, but Avery Hill, as we know, there's a big issue with student parking, Eltham Heights commuter parking. There's a long ongoing battle to try and get a controlled parking zone in Eltham Heights, which as councillors, the three of us are trying to prioritise because that's hundreds of residents. As John rightly mentioned, there's a knock-on effect if those gates are closed on Rennickendorf Avenue, so we need to tread carefully because it's very delicate. So I'd be happy to pick up privately on how I can help support that. Len's also supported us as the ward councillors. At the moment, our priority is to get that controlled parking zone in Eltham Heights, then Avery Hill, which is actually, there's no barrier to Avery Hill, Avery Hill Road, and then build from there. But I would finish by saying there needs to be a very robust plan. We saw a very naive green travel plan with the university, and look where that got us. I'm not sure what those measures need to be, but it needs to be have much more teeth than what we saw with the university. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Matt.
B. Twydale, local resident. Nobody's mentioned to date that the mansion and all the other buildings on the site, the stables, the stud groom area, the engine tower, are all grade 2 listed. Now I understand listing means if it's grade 2, you cannot alter the outside, you can only alter the inside. So has that been taken into account in any of the discussions, please?
No, an important point, and if we raise that with the last meeting, but we'll certainly raise that with the next meeting with Gary Herbert.
I think the other thing is there's all sorts of parts of the site, as we've just heard, whether it's the BMX track, whether it's the horticultural business, or whether it's the stables and other things, which to be honest, until fairly recently, even the council didn't know were there. You know, I mean,
That's how much
I think you know the extent of the site. I think has taken them by surprise. Probably took the university by surprise as well, to some extent. And I think, you know, Save the Winter Garden is of course the name of the campaign and the rest of it, but making the point that it's more than that, that it's the mansion, that it's the grounds as well, and there are all these other knock-on effects going beyond that into the rest of the site and beyond it to the streets around it. I think that's the next stage, is to point out that it's not just about the Winter Garden, it's about the entire site and everything that's around it.
And the toilets.
And the toilet. The toilet is very important.
Okay. Sorry, quick point, Stephanie.
No, I just want to say it's also about the historical significance of the site. You know, it's all about why it's there in the first place, who built it, you know, the length of time where all the materials came from, the architectural significance of inside the mansion. You know, we can't just throw it up for a school and forget about everything else that's important about that site. I agree with about the grade 2 listing. You know, it seems to me that a plan has been made to sell off the building plonk. Nothing about what goes on in the park, the community access to it, the future of the park. A lot more could be done in the park for children. You know, BMX scheme is brilliant. It's taking young people off the street and giving them something to do that they can enjoy and also contribute to their well-being and fitness. You know, they are all important things that are on the government's, you know, to-do list, and we really need to not allow the need to have a school just take precedence. There are all the other aspects of it, the parking, yes. You know, I just feel like we're not trying hard enough to get the council, the FE, and all the, you know, the people who have an interest in the site to actually sit down, look at what is it we have, what is it we're trying to sell, and you know, I'm very disturbed that the FE didn't know about the whole aspect of the
well, we
site.
don't know if they didn't, but anyhow, I think you've raised the kind of agenda that's in front of us, Stephanie, and I'd like to sort of perhaps bring things to a close now, because it's getting towards 9:30. But certainly that unifying theme of the historical legacy of the mansion site should be what leads us into the next stage of the negotiations. I think we're almost there in actually securing the future of the Winter Garden. We have more work to do at the planning stage in terms of actually ensuring that the linkages between the Winter Garden and the other listed parts of the mansion site are preserved for public use and access. And obviously people have raised enormous issues about what the likely impact of the school will have on the area, on the park, and indeed potentially on the heritage aspects of the mansion site. But I do remember in October 2017, a few months after our last public meeting, that the gallery at the town hall was filled to capacity by you, by supporters of the campaign, when we presented the petition and when we made a declaration about what our hopes were for the development of the site. And the fact that the gallery was almost filled out by you supporters does mean a lot, because it sort of shows the kind of collective spirit that's behind this campaign. It shows the solidarity that people are actually asserting. So that's what we need to make sure happens. Firstly, when the council calls the next consultation meeting on how they want to develop the Winter Garden site, and that could happen before Christmas, so we'll let you know about that. So we need to make sure there's a good response to that. And then in the new year, probably not immediately, but more towards the spring, I think the whole pre-planning process and the planning application stage is likely to take place. And we need a really energised turnout at those public meetings, so that the points that we've been making tonight, all of us, can actually be put over to the councillors who make the decisions on this. So appeal to you to sort of participate as much as you can in those next stages of this sort of campaign generally. Pat's waving to me to remind you to fill in this sheet if you haven't already lodged your names with us, so that we can keep you informed and we can actually invite you to the crucial meetings that come next. But thank you very much for coming. It's a marvellous turnout, and we are on the way, and I think we're going to be successful. Thank you.